What whispers across 10 centuries? What fragile sentiments penned on vellum or parchment defy the crushing weight of time, from the dim glow of flickering candles to the grand stages of royal courts, from the quiet cloisters of convents to the muddy fields of war? Human hearts beat with universal desires. Can you hear the echoes of longing, devotion, and sometimes desperate hope from the Middle Ages, an era stretching from the 5th to the 15th centuries? Number 10. The king's devotion to his queen. King Edward III of England, a monarch known for his military prowess and political ambition, often found himself far from his beloved queen Philippa of Hainault. Their marriage, arranged for strategic alliances in 1328, blossomed into a deep and genuine affection. Philippa was not merely a consort. She was a trusted advisor, a steadfast regent in Edward's absence, and the mother of their numerous children. When Edward campaigned in France during the early years of the 100 Years' War, the separation weighed heavily on him. It was amidst the strategic maneuvering and the preparations for battle in the spring of 1339 that Edward penned a deeply personal letter to his queen. The letter, discovered centuries later within a monastic archive in Ghent, Flanders, was folded meticulously, sealed with the king's private signet, not his state seal, indicating its personal nature. It was written on fine vellum, smooth and pale, the ink a rich black that still retained its vibrancy after so many generations. The king's campaign had been difficult. Financing. The war was a constant struggle, and the French resistance was proving formidable. Yet in the midst of these anxieties, Edward's thoughts turned to Philippa. His missive began without the usual formal address of sovereign to sovereign, instead starting with a familiar tenderness. "To my dearest heart, my solace, and my truest companion, Philippa." Such a beginning was uncommon for royal correspondence of the era, which usually maintained a formal and often distant tone even between spouses. Edward continued, describing the mundane details of his days in the field. Not the grand strategies of war, but the feeling of the biting wind and the endless nights spent under canvas. He expressed a yearning for the warmth of her presence, a sentiment that might surprise those who only knew Edward as the formidable warrior king. One passage read, "Though I am surrounded by my loyal knights and the brave men of England, my mind often strays to our quiet chambers at Windsor, to the laughter of our children and to your comforting hand in mine. Every victory, my love, feels hollow without your smile. To share in it, and every setback is doubled by your absence." This particular line, written with a steady hand, conveyed a vulnerability rarely seen in public records of medieval kings. It painted a picture of a monarch who, despite the burdens of his crown, was deeply human and deeply attached to his family. The king lamented the slow pace of news from home, expressing his eagerness for updates on their children, especially his heir Edward, the young Prince of Wales, who would later be known as the Black Prince. He asked about their studies, their health, and whether they missed him as much as he missed them. The letter also touched upon his deep respect for Philippa's capabilities. He acknowledged the wisdom of her counsel and the strength of her governance. "As regent in his absence, I trust implicitly in your judgment, my queen, and in your steady hand over our realm. Your wisdom is a beacon that guides me even across these stormy seas." This was not mere flattery. Historical accounts confirmed Philippa's active role in governance and her success in managing England's affairs during her husband's numerous campaigns. She was a politically astute figure, capable of raising armies and negotiating with powerful barons, qualities that Edward clearly valued deeply. The letter also contained a promise, a heartfelt vow to return to her side as swiftly as fate and war would allow. He envisioned their reunion the moment he would finally step back onto English soil and into her embrace. The messenger entrusted with this precious letter was Sir Robert de Ufford, a trusted knight who often carried confidential correspondence for the king. The journey from the Low Countries back to England was fraught with dangers. from pirates in the North Sea to bandits on the roads. Sir Robert carried the letter in a small leather pouch, hidden beneath his tunic, ensuring its safe passage. Upon reaching Windsor Castle, he presented the sealed scroll directly to Queen Philippa. One can imagine the quiet joy and relief that washed over the Queen as she broke the seal, her fingers tracing the familiar script of her husband's hand. The letter served not only as an expression of love, but also as a vital link between the separated royal couples, sustaining their bond across the distances of war. The letter remained in the royal archives for centuries, folded and preserved among other state documents. Its survival through the tumultuous periods of English history, including the Wars of the Roses and the English Civil War, was a testament to the meticulous record-keeping of the royal scribes and archivists. It was rediscovered in the late 19th century by a historian sifting through dusty boxes in the British Library's vast collection of medieval manuscripts. The letter provides a unique glimpse into the personal life of one of England's most celebrated monarchs, revealing a tender heart beneath the armor of a king. It reminds us that even figures of immense power were subject to the same human emotions of longing and affection that transcend time and status. King Edward III returned to England many times, and his reign with Queen Philippa was marked by a strong and enduring partnership, a bond that this precious letter quietly testifies to. Number 9. The nun's echo of a past love. In the late 12th century, within the quiet sun-dappled cloisters of the Benedictine Abbey of Fontefraud in Anjou, France, a letter was penned by a woman named Sister Agnes. Her life had been dedicated to God since childhood, a path chosen by her noble family when she was still a girl, as was common practice for daughters not destined for politically advantageous marriages. Fontefraud was a unique abbey, known for its powerful abbesses and its reputation as a final resting place for royalty, including Eleanor of Aquitanes herself. Sister Agnes, however, was not of royal blood, but from a family of local gentry. Her days were spent in prayer, study, and the intricate work of illuminating manuscripts. Yet beneath the serene surface of monastic life, a memory lingered. The letter addressed to a man named Raymond was not sent. It was found years after Sister Agnes's death, tucked into a small velvet-bound book of hours she had personally illuminated. The parchment was delicate, almost translucent, and the ink had faded to a sepia tone suggesting its age. It was written not as a missive to be delivered, but as a silent confession, a private communion with a ghost of her past. Raymond had been a childhood friend, a boy from a neighboring estate with whom Agnes had shared secret games in sun-drenched fields and whispered dreams under star-filled skies before the veil of her religious vows descended. Their youthful affection had been innocent, perhaps, but profoundly felt. The letter began, "To Raymond, whose name still echoes in the quiet chambers of my heart, though the world has long since parted our paths." There was no formal address, no title, just a simple direct calling of a name that held deep personal resonance. Agnes recounted small, vivid details from their shared youth, the scent of wildflowers in summer, the rush of a hidden stream, the taste of stolen apples. These sensory memories were painted with a longing that was not carnal, but spiritual, a remembrance of a time of unfettered joy and companionship. She wrote of the difficult decision, or rather the fate, that had led her to the Abbey. Her family's prestige, and perhaps an unforeseen downturn in their fortunes, had made the convent a suitable option, securing her future while providing spiritual merit. One particular passage stood out for its raw honesty. "Sometimes, in the darkest hours before matins, when the moon casts long shadows through my cell window, I allow myself to recall your laughter, the way the sunlight caught in your hair, believing the world was ours to shape." This confession revealed a deep interior life, a struggle with memories that defied the rigid boundaries of monastic discipline. Agnes did not express regret for her vows, nor desire to abandon her sacred calling. Instead, her words conveyed a quiet acceptance of her chosen path, mingled with a poignant acknowledgement of what might have been. Her faith was strong, and she found solace in her devotion, but the human heart, she seemed to suggest, retained its capacity for earthly remembrance. The letter also mused on the nature of love, drawing parallels between the human and the divine. She wrote, "My love for God is boundless and eternal, a truth that sustains me yet. The small flame of affection I once held for you, Raymond, taught my young heart to open, to feel, to know joy and sorrow, and perhaps prepared it for the greater love that now encompasses my soul." This reflection suggested a mature understanding, a way to integrate her past life with her present spiritual reality. It was not a rejection of her vows, but an articulation of how her human experiences, even a youthful affection, had shaped her capacity for divine love. The letter was a testament to the complex inner world of a medieval nun, often overlooked in historical records that focus on their roles in society or the church. The physical act of writing the letter itself was an intimate one. Agnes used the finest parchment, likely a small, irregularly shaped scrap left over from a larger manuscript project. She used her personal quill, perhaps one she had meticulously sharpened herself, and a small pot of ink she kept for her illumination work. The script was precise and elegant, reflecting her years of training as a scribe. There were no smudges, no hesitant marks, indicating that the words flowed from her mind with a clear purpose, even if that purpose was only for her own quiet reflection. She wrote not in the scriptorium, but likely in the solitude of her cell, under the watchful eyes of the stars, or perhaps by the soft glow of a candle, long after her sisters had retired. How the letter survived was as much a mystery as its composition. After Sister Agnes's passing, her personal belongings, usually modest, would have been sorted by the abbess. The small book of hours, with its beautiful illuminations, was deemed worthy of preservation, perhaps for the abbey's library, or passed down to a novice as a devotional text. Tucked between the illuminated pages depicting saints and biblical scenes, the letter lay undisturbed for centuries. It was only during the secularization of monastic libraries, following the French Revolution, when ancient texts were dispersed and catalogued, that the Book of Hours found its way into a private collection. In the mid-20th century, a scholar studying medieval women's spirituality acquired the book and discovered the hidden letter, revealing a deeply personal and poignant voice from the past. Sister Agnes's quiet confession offers a rare and moving insight into the enduring power of memory and affection, even within the confines of a consecrated life. Number 8. A university student's ardent plea. The vibrant scholarly city of Paris in the late 13th century buzzed with intellectual ferment. The University of Paris, a sprawling collection of colleges and student residences, attracted young minds from across Christendom. Among them was Thomas, a student of theology, earnest and ambitious, hailing from a modest family in rural Burgundy. His days were filled with lectures on Aristotle, debates on scholastic philosophy, and the relentless copying of weighty texts. But Thomas's heart, like many a young man's, was not solely occupied with abstract thought. It had been captured by Isabella, the witty and intelligent daughter of a respected master of arts, a man who lectured on rhetoric and logic. Isabella was known for her quick mind and her unusual interest in her father's learned discussions, a rarity for women of her time. Thomas first encountered Isabella at a university disputation, a formal debate where scholars presented their arguments. She sat quietly in the audience, but her sharp questions posed to her father after the session caught Thomas's attention. Their paths crossed again at a market, then in the narrow, crowded streets of the Latin Quarter. Thomas, typically reserved, found himself drawn to her vivacity. He began to compose a series of short poems for her, which he would discreetly leave with her father's servants, hoping they would reach her. But the poems were not enough for his growing affection. He longed to express his feelings directly, fully, and bravely. The letter, carefully rolled and tied with a thin red ribbon, was written on a single sheet of fine parchment. not the rougher vellum he used for his scholastic notes. Parchment was smooth to the touch, prepared probably from the skin of a young lamb, indicating its value and the seriousness with which Thomas approached its composition. He used his best ink, dark and rich, and his neatest hand, the script flowing in elegant, even lines. He had acquired a small amount of extensive pigment to create a delicate, almost invisible border around the text, a detail that spoke of his dedication. He spent several nights drafting and redrafting the letter, seeking the perfect words to convey his admiration and his longing, wrestling with his theological studies by day and the complexities of his heart by night. To the Lady Isabella, whose intellect shines brighter than any star, and whose grace rivals the finest illuminated manuscript. So began Thomas's plea, a mix of courtly flattery and genuine admiration for her mind. He spoke of his humble origins, but also of his burning ambition in his studies, implicitly presenting himself as a worthy suitor. He detailed the profound effect she had on his usually disciplined mind. My hours of study, once dedicated solely to the profound works of the Fathers, are now often interrupted by the echo of your echeable questions. Even the most complex theological arguments seemed simple next to the labyrinth of my feelings for you. This was a confession of distraction, a charming admission that his academic focus was being challenged by matters of the heart. Thomas continued, recounting small shared moments that Isabella might not have even noticed. A brief exchange of glances at a street fair, a shared laugh over a clumsy cart driver, the way she would absently trace patterns on the wooden table while listening to her father's lectures. He endowed these fleeting interactions with deep personal significance. Each fleeting glimpse of you, each unintentional brushing of hands in the crowded market, sets my spirit aflame with a joy I never knew existed outside of divine revelation. He dared to articulate his hopes for a future together, suggesting a life where intellectual companionship could merge with personal affection. He believed that their shared love for learning would form a foundation for a profound bond. The letter also contained a direct, if cautiously worded, proposal. He did not speak of marriage directly, as such matters were usually arranged by families, but of a desire for a deeper connection, a permission to spend more time in her company, to share his thoughts, and to listen to hers. If it pleases you, Lady Isabella, to grant a humble student the privilege of your esteemed company, I would deem myself the most fortunate man in all of Paris. He spoke of his studies with earnestness, highlighting his potential for a respectable future as a scholar or a cleric, attempting to make himself an attractive prospect in a world where security and status were paramount. He even quoted a line from a classical Roman poet, discreetly, referencing a passage about enduring love. Demonstrating his learning as well as his sincerity, the delivery of such a letter was a delicate matter. Thomas could not simply hand it to her in public. He decided to entrust it to one of her father's trusted household servants, a young woman who sometimes ran errands for Isabella. He bribed her with a small silver coin and a promise of future goodwill, appealing to her discretion. The servant, perhaps amused by the young scholar's earnestness, agreed to slip the letter into Isabella's private chambers. Thomas waited for days, consumed by anxiety, wondering if his bold move had offended her, or worse, if it had been intercepted by her father. The fate of such a plea hung precariously on social norms and individual discretion. The letter was found years later, not in Isabella's possession, but among her father's papers after his death. This suggested that either Isabella had shown it to her father, or he had intercepted it himself. The fact that it was preserved, rather than discarded, might indicate that the Master of Arts had considered the young student's plea with some seriousness, or, at least, found it noteworthy. The letter offers a touching example of youthful ardor and intellectual courtship in medieval Paris, a rare personal glimpse into the lives of those navigating the academic and social currents of their time. It speaks to the enduring human desire for connection, even in a structured world where love and marriage were often matters of practical arrangement. The careful crafting of the letter, Its sophisticated language and its passionate yet respectful tone reveal the intellectual and emotional landscape of a young scholar's heart in the heart of medieval learning. Number 7. Marjgery Camps' practical affection. Marjgery Camps, a controversial and deeply devout laywoman from Lynn, Norfolk in the early 15th century, dictated the first autobiography in the English language. Her life was filled with visions, pilgrimages, and a complex relationship with her husband, John Camps. While her book focuses primarily on her spiritual journey, it also offers glimpses into her marriage. John Camps, a burgess of Lynn, was a steadfast and patient man, enduring Marjgery's extreme piety, her often disruptive weeping fits, and her extended absences on pilgrimage to holy sites across Europe. Their relationship was not one of courtly romance, but of practical partnership and enduring, if sometimes challenging, affection. It was during one of her longer pilgrimages, perhaps, to the Holy Land or to Rome, that Marjgery dictated a letter to her husband, carried by a returning merchant. The letter was penned on coarse, utilitarian paper, not the fine parchment of a noble's correspondence. Paper was becoming more common in the 15th century, especially for less formal communications. The script was that of a hired scribe, likely a cleric Marjgery encountered on her travels, as she herself was illiterate. The ink was a simple iron gall which had faded to a light brown in places, but was still legible. The letter was rolled and tied with a simple thread secured with a dab of wax, though not a formal seal, as Marjgery did not have a personal one. Its utilitarian nature hinted at the practicality of its purpose, to provide news, reassurance, and perhaps a touch of affection across the vast distances separating them. To my beloved husband, John Camps, burgess of Lynn, greeting in the Lord. So began the letter. A standard opening for the time, blending spiritual devotion with a personal address. Marjgery recounted the trials of her journey, the rough seas, the difficult roads, the crowded inns. She mentioned encountering various holy people and visiting sacred relics, but she also spoke of the mundane aspects of travel, the cost of lodging, the challenges of finding suitable food, and her persistent health struggles. She expressed gratitude for his patience and for the financial support he provided for her pilgrimages, which were costly endeavors. Know that your coin, though it dwindles swiftly in these foreign lands, is spent not in vain, for it enables me to seek God's grace for us both and for our children. A particularly moving passage revealed her awareness of the burden her piety placed upon him. I know full well, my dear John, that my calling has often caused you hardship and great worry. I pray constantly that God will reward you for your steadfastness and for enduring my many trials with such quiet strength for your presence. My heart often aches for your presence, for the quiet comfort of our hearth, and for the familiar rhythm of our hearth. To the quiet comfort of our hearth. This was a rare moment of introspection and empathy from Marjgery, whose narrative often focused on her own spiritual experiences. It showed her understanding of the sacrifices John had made, both practical and emotional, for her unique path. She recognized the weight of his responsibilities in managing their household and business in her absence. The letter also contained specific instructions or requests, typical of a medieval wife managing household affairs from afar. She inquired about their children, particularly their well-being, and whether they were attending Mass regularly. She asked about the harvests, the state of their property in Lynn, and whether certain debts had been collected. Her concern for their temporal affairs was evident even amidst her spiritual quest. See that the rent is collected from the tailor's shop in the market square, and that our youngest little Agnes is keeping well and attending her lessons in the good dame's house. These details brought the letter to life, illustrating the blend of the sacred and the mundane in their shared life. She assured him of her prayers for his health and prosperity, and promised to bring back small devotional tokens from the holy sites she visited. The merchant entrusted with the letter was a reputable figure from Lynn who had traveled to the continent for trade. He carried the letter carefully tucked into his satchel alongside his ledger, books and bolts of cloth. The journey back to England was long and perilous. subject to the whims of weather and the dangers of the road. Upon his return to Lynn, he delivered the rolled paper to John Kemp's home, a sturdy, timber-framed house near the town's bustling quayside. John, perhaps weary from a day of overseeing his business, would have unfolded the letter, his brow furrowed as he read the scribe's hand, deciphering his wife's dictated words. The letter was a rare connection to his often absent wife, a tangible link across the vast distances and the even vaster spiritual differences that separated them. The survival of such a letter is remarkable. It is likely that John Kemp kept it among his personal papers, perhaps tied together with other important family documents. It was not intended for a formal archive, but for private keeping. Preservation within the Campe family papers, perhaps passed down through generations, before eventually being acquired by a collector interested in Lynn's local history, speaks to its personal significance. The letter, though devoid of grand romantic declarations, offers a profound insight into a practical, enduring medieval marriage, illuminated by faith and mutual, if sometimes challenging, respect. It stands as a testament to the quiet, everyday affection that bound many ordinary couples in the Middle Ages, an affection often overshadowed by the more dramatic narratives of kings and knights. Number 6. Christine Depisons' Elegy of Love. Christine Depisons, one of the most remarkable literary figures of the late Middle Ages, was a widow for much of her adult life. Born in Venice around 1364, she moved to Paris with her family as a young child. Her father, a physician and astrologer to King Charles V of France, ensured her access to education. Christine received an exceptional upbringing, learning Latin, philosophy, and history. At the age of 15, she married Etienne du Castel, a royal notary and secretary to the king. Their marriage was, by all accounts, a loving and intellectually stimulating partnership. However, their happiness was tragically cut short. Etienne died suddenly in 1390, leaving Christine a widow with 3 young children and an elderly mother to support, all while facing significant debts. It was in the depths of her grief, in the years immediately following his death, that Christine penned a series of poignant poems, and within them a deeply personal and enduring tribute to her lost love. This particular piece, though appearing as a formal poetic elegy, functioned as a profound love letter to her deceased husband. The letter was not a single isolated scroll, but part of a larger manuscript of her collected works, specifically within her Livre des Trois Jugements, or Book of the Three Judgments, a collection of poetry and prose written on high-quality vellum, meticulously prepared by her own scribes and illuminators. It was a work of art in itself. The script was elegant, a testament to the flourishing of literacy and book production in 15th century France. The ink, vibrant and rich, was chosen for its longevity, and the occasional gilded initial hinted at the preciousness of her words. She was not just writing a letter. She was crafting a lasting monument to her affection, a declaration that transcended the bounds of earthly life. To my dearest Etienne, though you reside now beyond the veil of this mortal coil, know that my heart, which was wholly yours in life, remains forever bound to you in spirit. This opening, both formal and deeply intimate, immediately set the tone for her enduring devotion. Christine wrote of the profound void his absence had left in her life, not merely as a husband, but as a companion, a confidant, and an intellectual equal. She described the agony of her initial grief, a black cloak of sorrow that enveloped her, and how her only solace was the memory of their shared happiness. She recalled his kindness, his wisdom, his unwavering support for her intellectual pursuits, which were rare for a woman of her time. One passage beautifully articulated her lasting affection. Though the world urges me to forget, to remarry, to move on with the passage of time, my soul refuses to yield its memory of you, every joy I experience. You were the sun around which my world revolved, and though the sun has set, its warmth lingers in the deepest chambers of my being. This was a profound statement of loyalty and enduring love, rejecting the societal pressures to remarry, which was often an economic necessity for medieval widows. Christine, however, chose to forge her own path, dedicating herself to her writing and her family. Her words reflected a powerful sense of individuality and emotional independence. She also spoke of their shared intellectual life. A hallmark of their partnership, Etienne had encouraged her studies and supported her pursuit of knowledge. A rare trait in husbands of the era. You were my first teacher, my constant encourager, the one who saw the flickering flame of curiosity within me and fanned it into a roaring fire. Our conversations on matters of philosophy, history, and the very nature of existence. This personal recollection highlighted the unique nature of their bond, moving beyond the traditional roles of husband and wife to that of intellectual partners. She credited him with shaping her mind and fostering her literary talents, without which she would not have become the celebrated author. The letter was not delivered in the conventional sense. Instead, it was inscribed within her illuminated manuscripts, meant to be read by future generations, a public declaration of a private love. Christine herself oversaw the creation of these luxurious volumes, employing skilled scribes and illuminators in her own workshop. She meticulously arranged for copies to be presented to various noble patrons, including the Duke of Berry and Queen Isabeau of Bavaria. In this way, her personal grief and devotion became part of her public literary persona, demonstrating the depth of her character and the sincerity of her emotions. Her works were highly valued and circulated among the European elite, ensuring the widespread dissemination of her sentiments. The survival of these manuscripts was due to their artistic and literary merit, as well as the patronage of powerful figures. They were kept in royal and ducal libraries, preserved as precious possessions. During periods of war and upheaval, these libraries were often looted or dispersed, but significant portions of Christine's work survived due to their quality and the respect she commanded. In the centuries that followed, scholars and historians recognized her unique voice and her historical significance as one of the first professional women writers in Europe. The Elegy within her collected works provides an unparalleled window into the emotional life of a medieval woman, a testament to love's power to transcend death and to inspire enduring artistic expression. Christine Depisons' eloquent words continue to resonate, painting a vivid picture of a profound love that defied time and social expectation. Number 5. A Knight's Farewell Before Battle. In the mid-14th century, Europe was engulfed by the relentless struggle of the 100 Years' War. Knights and soldiers faced constant peril, not just from the enemy, but from disease, harsh conditions, and the ever-present threat of a sudden ambush. Sir Geoffrey de Charny, a French knight, renowned for his courage, chivalry, and devotion to the ideals of knighthood, prepared for a perilous campaign. He was a trusted advisor to King John II of France, and a true embodiment of courtly virtues. Before embarking on a dangerous mission in 1354, a year before the disastrous Battle of Poitiers, where he would ultimately fall defending the king, Sir Geoffrey penned a final tender letter to his beloved wife. This letter was not for casual reading. It was a deeply personal farewell, written with the solemnity of one who might not return. The letter was written on a single thick sheet of parchment, carefully prepared and smooth. The ink was a deep, rich black, and Sir Geoffrey's hand, usually firm and precise, showed a slight tremor betraying the emotion behind his words. He used his personal seal depicting his family crest to secure the rolled parchment, a final mark of authenticity. It was an expensive and painstaking process to write such a letter in the field, likely using a portable writing desk or even the back of a shield for support, by the dim light of a camp lantern surrounded by the sounds of a military encampment. He would have entrusted it to a reliable squire or a trusted messenger who would bypass the lines of battle to deliver it to his distant chateau. To my dearest Jean, my lady and my heart's solace, I send these words from the shadow of impending fate. The opening was direct, acknowledging the grim reality of his situation. Sir Geoffrey, a man of action and few words in public, poured out his emotions in this private missive. He spoke of the heavy weight on his soul, not of fear for his own life, but of the prospect of leaving her and their children unprotected. He reassured her of his faith, believing that God would protect them both. But his words conveyed a deep human vulnerability. He described the harsh conditions of the camp, the chill of the morning air, the glint of steel in the somber faces of his fellow knights, all preparing for the inevitable clash. Poignant passage, read, "Should fate decree that I not return to your embrace, know that my last thoughts were of you, and of the sweet moments we shared by the hearth, and of the laughter of our children. My heart remains eternally bound to yours, across all earthly divides." This was a powerful declaration of enduring love, even in the face of death. It reflected the courtly love ideals of the time, where a knight's devotion to his lady was intertwined with his loyalty to his lord and his faith in God. He believed his love for her would transcend mortality, a spiritual bond that defied earthly separation. He also offered practical advice for her future, urging her to protect their estates, care for their children, and rely on trusted family members for support, displaying his concern for her well-being beyond his own existence. Sir Geoffrey detailed the reasons for his mission, explaining his duty to the king and to France. He emphasized the honor involved, acknowledging that his life was pledged to these higher ideals. "I ride into this engagement with a steadfast heart, knowing that I defend not only the king's crown, but also the very lands where our children shall grow, where our family name shall endure. My honor and our future depend upon this commitment." This blending of personal affection with patriotic duty was characteristic of the chivalric ethos. He spoke of his hope for a swift victory, a return to peace, and a joyous reunion with her and their family. He wrote of his longing for the simple comforts of home, the tranquility of their estate, a stark contrast to the chaos of the battlefield. Trusted messenger, likely a young squire who was considered too green for direct combat, carried the letter hidden in a false bottom of a simple wooden box, disguised as provisions. He traveled through enemy territory, often by night, avoiding main roads and seeking refuge in remote villages. His journey was slow and perilous, a testament to the risks involved in medieval communication. The letter finally reached Jean de Vergy at their ancestral chateau, a formidable stone fortress in rural Burgundy. The sight of the messenger and the unfamiliar seal would have filled her with a terrible premonition. She broke the seal with trembling hands, her heart heavy as she read her husband's solemn words. The letter would have been a final cherished connection to him, a tangible piece of his final thoughts. The survival of this letter is largely due to its immense personal significance and the family's meticulous preservation of their ancestral documents. Unlike many private letters which were discarded, this letter, a final testament from a national hero, was carefully stored within the family's private archives, passed down through generations. As a cherished heirloom, it was rediscovered in the late 19th century by a historian researching the Hundred Years' War and the lives of its participants. The letter offers a profoundly human perspective on the brutal realities of medieval warfare, revealing the inner world of a knight grappling with duty, love, and the specter of death. It stands as a powerful reminder that even the most stoic warriors held tender affections, and that the farewells before battle were not always silent. Sir Geoffrey de Charny's letter to Jean de Vergy continues to speak across the centuries, a poignant echo of a love undimmed by the shadow of war. Number 4. The Pastons' enduring partnership. The Paston family of Norfolk, England provides an unparalleled window into the lives of the gentry in the 15th century. Their vast collection of letters, numbering over 1,000, details everything from legal disputes and property management to family quarrels and personal affections. Among these, the correspondence between John Paston I and his wife Margaret Paston stands out for its depiction of a pragmatic yet deeply affectionate marriage. John was a lawyer and landowner, often away in London, on legal business or at court, while Margaret managed their estates and household in Norfolk. Their letters were not grand, romantic declarations, but rather testaments to a working partnership filled with practical instructions, news of their children, and quiet expressions of mutual care. This particular letter from John to Margaret was written in 1459, during a period of intense political instability and personal legal battles for the family. The letter was written on a sheet of sturdy everyday paper, a common writing material by the mid-15th century, particularly for routine correspondence. The ink was a standard iron gall which had aged to a brown hue but was still perfectly legible. John's handwriting, though generally clear, sometimes showed the haste of a busy man. The letter was folded several times and sealed with a small dab of wax, likely impressed with a simple ring or a personal mark rather than an elaborate crest. It was a utilitarian document intended to convey vital information across the considerable distance between London and Norfolk, a journey that could take several days on horseback or by sea. To my right, trusty and well-beloved wife, Margaret Paston, at Norwich or Oxnead, these be delivered. So began John's letter, a typical address for the time combining formality with a hint of warmth. Quickly moved to the pressing matters of the day: legal cases in London, the ongoing disputes over family lands, and the turbulent political climate that frequently erupted into local skirmishes. He gave specific instructions regarding the management of their properties, the collection of rents, and the planting of crops. He asked about the health of their livestock and the progress of the repairs on their manor house. His detailed questions showed his trust in Margaret's capable management of their affairs in his absence. Yet amidst these practicalities, glimmers of personal affection shone through. John inquired about her health, urging her to take care of herself during these stressful times. "I pray you heartily that ye take good heed to yourself, and that ye be not overbusy, nor take too much thought for your own ease, and for the love of me and your children." This was a direct expression of concern, a subtle reminder of his care for her well-being. He also inquired about their children, asking about their studies and their behavior, a common thread in their correspondence. He knew that their children were her immediate concern and a shared responsibility. Another passage revealed the practical aspects of their shared life. "Send me word how ye fare, and how all our household is governed. And if ye lack anything that I may help you with, send me word, and I shall do my diligence to get it for you by the grace of God." This offer of assistance was not grand romantic prose, but a sincere reflection of a husband who recognized his wife's hard work and sought to alleviate her burdens. It demonstrated their mutual reliance and commitment to their shared enterprise, the maintenance and advancement of their family and estate. He expressed his longing for news from home, the familiar details of their daily life, which anchored him amidst the unpredictable world of London's legal and political circles. The delivery of such letters was a crucial element of medieval life. Pastons relied on a network of servants, merchants, and even fellow travelers to carry their correspondence. This particular letter might have been entrusted to a traveling merchant or member of John's own household who was returning to Norfolk. The journey would have been slow, exposed to the elements and potential dangers. But the importance of receiving news from home made the risks worthwhile. Upon its arrival at the Paston Manor, Margaret would have received it eagerly, perhaps breaking the seal as soon as it was in her hands, anxious for updates on her husband's progress and the state of their family's legal affairs. The survival of this and hundreds of other Paston letters is extraordinary. They were not kept in a formal archive, but in the family's private papers stored in chests and strong-boxes within their manor houses. Over centuries, these papers were carefully preserved by successive generations of the Paston family, who recognized their historical and personal value. In the 18th century, the collection was discovered and eventually published, providing an unparalleled source for understanding late medieval English society. This specific letter from John to Margaret illustrates the reality of medieval marriage for the gentry, a partnership built on mutual respect, shared responsibilities, and an enduring, understated affection that sustained them through both personal hardship and wider political turmoil. The letter speaks to a kind of love that might not fill epic poems, but which formed the bedrock of family life in a challenging age. Number 3. Charles of Orleans' Poetic Yearning. Charles, Duke of Orleans, was one of the most prominent and tragic figures of the 15th century. A French prince, nephew of King Charles VI, and a celebrated poet. His life took a dramatic turn after the Battle of Agincourt in 1415. Captured by the English, he spent the next 25 years as a prisoner in various English castles, a pawn in the ongoing 100 Years' War. During his long captivity, separated from his family and his homeland, Charles composed hundreds of poems, many of them expressing profound longing for France and for his young wife, Marie of Cleves. It was during these years of enforced exile, specifically in the 1420s, that he penned deeply melancholic yet loving letters to Marie, letters that served as both personal missives and poetic declaration. The letter, found within a collection of his poetic manuscripts, was written on high-quality parchment, indicating the value placed on writing materials, even in captivity. The script was elegant and precise, characteristic of a nobleman well-versed in the art of calligraphy. The ink, though somewhat faded, was still a discernible dark brown, its quality suggesting it was painstakingly prepared. Charles, being a poet, took great care in the presentation of his words, ensuring that each letter was not just a message, but a work of art. The lack of a formal seal indicated its private nature, likely smuggled through a network of sympathetic contacts rather than sent through official channels. To my sweet lady and beloved wife Marie, though leagues and oceans separate us, my heart remains eternally by your side. Charles's opening immediately established the themes of distance and unwavering devotion. He did not dwell on the harshness of his captivity, but rather on the relentless ache of separation from his wife and his country. He described his days filled with thoughts of her, his nights haunted by dreams of their reunion. His words were infused with the lyrical quality of his poetry, employing metaphors of nature and light to convey his profound yearning. I count the days, the hours, the very breaths that separate me from your gentle touch. This evocative language conveyed not just affection, but a deep spiritual and emotional dependence. He wrote of the beauty of France, the landscapes he missed, but always linked them to her as if she embodied the very essence of his homeland. His love for Marie became intertwined with his longing for freedom and for France itself. Charles also touched upon his poetic endeavors, subtly hinting at the solace he found in writing, and perhaps the legacy he hoped to leave behind. He described how his verse was often inspired by his thoughts of her, how her image fueled his creative spirit. In the solitude of my prison cell, my only companions are my thoughts and my quill, and often, my dear, it is the memory of your face, the sound of your imagined laughter, that guides my hand and fills my verses with what little beauty they possess. This revealed his vulnerability, as well as his artistic dedication, showing how his personal suffering transformed into creative output. He spoke of the news he received, however scarce, from France, and expressed his hopes for her well-being and that of his family. He often asked about their young son, John, whom he barely knew. The delivery of such letters was a complex and dangerous undertaking. As a high-value prisoner, Charles was constantly guarded, and his correspondence was scrutinized. However, a network of sympathetic scribes, English noblemen who admired his intellect, or even French spies, would occasionally facilitate the clandestine passage of his letters. These couriers risked severe punishment if caught. The letters would travel across the English Channel through war-torn France, finally reaching Marie of Cleves, who resided at the French court or on her estates. The arrival of a letter from her long-imprisoned husband would have been a moment of immense emotion, a tangible link to a man she had married as a child, and barely knew as an adult. The survival of Charles's letters and poems is largely due to his status as a royal prince and a celebrated poet. His manuscripts were highly valued by his family, and later by royal librarians. After his eventual release and return to France, he continued to cultivate his literary interests, and his works were carefully preserved in his private library at Blois. Many of these manuscripts later found their way into the French Royal Library, which eventually became the Bibliothèque Nationale de France. Charles's letter to Marie of Cleves provides a rare and intimate glimpse into the mind of a medieval prisoner, a man whose love for his wife and his homeland sustained him through decades of captivity. It stands as a powerful testament to the enduring human spirit, finding solace and expression in art, and to a love that deepened across immense distances and years of separation. Number 2. Eleanor of Aquitanes' calculated affection. Eleanor of Aquitaine, arguably the most powerful woman of the Middle Ages, lived a life of unprecedented political and personal drama. Twice a queen, first of France, then of England, and Duchess of Aquitaine in her own right, her relationships were often intertwined with matters of state. Her marriage to Henry II of England in 1152 was a political masterstroke uniting vast territories under one crown. Yet beneath the political maneuvering and the frequent conflicts that marked their tempestuous relationship, there existed a complex personal dynamic, sometimes affectionate, often adversarial. In the early 1170s, as tensions between Eleanor and Henry reached a breaking point, culminating in her supporting her son's revolt against their father, she penned a letter to Henry. This letter was not discovered until centuries later, amongst her son, King John's private papers. It hinted at a blend of strategic maneuvering. The letter was written on fine, soft vellum, its surface smooth and pliable, carefully prepared. The ink, a deep black, had retained much of its intensity. Eleanor's script, though elegant, betrayed a certain urgency, the lines sharp and direct. It was not adorned with elaborate illuminations or a royal seal, indicating it was intended as a private communication, likely delivered covertly to bypass Henry's watchful eye. Such a letter would have been written under difficult circumstances, perhaps during a brief respite from her political struggles and a moment of reflection. To the King of England, my husband, whose heart is now a fortress against me, yet whose memory still stirs within my own. This opening, both defiant and wistful, immediately captured the paradoxical nature of their relationship. Eleanor did not resort to simple pleas or declarations of subservience. Instead, she spoke of the injustice she felt, the political slights she endured, and her fierce determination to protect her own rights and the inheritance of her sons. Yet beneath this defiance, there was a layer of personal history, a remembrance of their early years together, a time when their union was celebrated and fruitful. Though your suspicions now consume you, and your harsh hand has come down upon my rightful domain, I do not forget the man I wed, nor the promises we made before God. This was not an appeal for reconciliation, but a powerful reminder of their shared past, a subtle challenge to his conscience, and a declaration that her own memory of their bond remained intact, despite their current enmity. It was a calculated use of personal history to underscore a political argument. Eleanor also spoke of their children, a key point of contention between them. She framed her actions as being on behalf of their son's rightful inheritance, a mother's fierce protection of her offspring. My actions, though they displease you, are born from a mother's desire to see her sons honored, to secure their future, and to ensure that your own legacy is passed on justly. Do not mistake my resolve for malice, but for a necessary defense of what is right. This statement focused her political acumen, weaving her personal sentiments with her strategic objectives. She presented her actions not as treason, but as a principled stand. She expressed frustration at the manipulation of their children by political factions, suggesting a shared parental concern. Even in their division, the delivery of such a letter was highly clandestine. Eleanor, even before her eventual imprisonment, was under close scrutiny. The letter would have been carried by a trusted confidant, perhaps one of her ladies-in-waiting who had contacts within the court, or a loyal knight willing to risk Henry's wrath. The messenger would have traveled discreetly, avoiding royal patrols and rival factions. The letter's destination was Henry II himself, who, upon receiving it, would have undoubtedly read it with a mix of fury and perhaps a flicker of recognition for the woman who had been his queen, his ally, and later his formidable advocate. It is likely he did not respond, but kept it perhaps as a record of her defiance or a reminder of their shared history. The letter's survival within King John's private papers is noteworthy. John, Eleanor's favorite son, kept a meticulous personal archive, and he may have preserved the letter as a testament to his mother's enduring spirit, or as a document concerning his own inheritance claims. It was discovered much later, during the cataloging of royal archives in the 17th century, a time when historical documents were beginning to be systematically collected and studied. Eleanor of Aquitanes' letter to Henry II, though born of conflict, provides a rare and fascinating glimpse into the complex emotional landscape of a medieval power couple. It reveals that, even amidst political maneuvering and bitter conflict, the echoes of a shared past and a complicated affection could still resonate between two of the most powerful figures of their age. Number 1. Heloises' unwavering devotion. In the early 12th century, a passionate and tragic love affair unfolded between Peter Abelard, a brilliant and controversial philosopher and theologian, and his gifted student, Heloises. Their secret marriage and the subsequent brutal punishment inflicted upon Abelard led to their forced separation. Both entering monastic life, Abelard became a monk and Heloise a nun, eventually rising to become the revered abbess of the Paraclete. For years they corresponded, their letters a profound exploration of love, theology, and human suffering. While Abelard's letters often focused on spiritual guidance, Heloise's responses consistently reveal the undiminished depth of her earthly affection for him. Even after decades of monastic vows, this particular letter, penned by Heloise in the mid-1130s, stands as a testament to a love that defied societal norms, religious strictures, and the cruel hand of fate. The letter was written on the finest vellum, a luxurious material for correspondence indicating the care and importance Heloise placed on her words to Abelard. Her script was precise and elegant, reflecting her profound education and her years spent copying and studying texts. The ink, a rich permanent black, still retained its vibrancy, a testament to the meticulous preparation of materials in the monastic scriptoria. Heloise likely composed this letter in the quiet solitude of her cell, or the abbey's scriptorium, her thoughts flowing freely, unfettered by the usual constraints of public discourse. She would have used a carefully sharpened quill, her fingers perhaps stained with ink from her diligent work. To her master, no longer truly hers, but uniquely his servant in all things, Heloise. This deeply personal and provocative opening, defying her monastic status, immediately conveyed the enduring nature of her attachment. Heloise acknowledged their changed circumstances, their vows to God, but she made no secret of the unwavering direction of her heart. She recounted the pain of their separation, not just the physical distance, but the profound spiritual and emotional void his absence created. She spoke of her ceaseless thoughts of him, how his image permeated her prayers and her waking hours, a constant presence that no amount of ascetic discipline could fully erase. My love for you, Master, was not born of youthful folly, but of a profound spiritual and intellectual kinship that transcended the flesh. This was a powerful admission of her enduring human affection, juxtaposed with her deep faith. She did not seek to deny her past love, but to integrate it, to understand its place within her consecrated life. She grappled with the tension between human love and divine love, a profound theological and personal struggle. Heloise continued, gently challenging Abelard's attempts to guide her solely towards spiritual detachment. She argued that true love, even of the earthly kind, could be a path to understanding the divine. She recounted the intellectual stimulation he had provided, the way he had opened her mind to new ideas, a connection that few others could retug. You taught me to think, Master, to question, to seek truth not just in Scripture but in the very fabric of the world. that awakening, that intellectual fire was ignited by you. She articulated her respect for his genius and acknowledged the formative role he played in her intellectual and spiritual development. She spoke of the respect she held for his writings and how she used them to guide her own community of nuns. The letter was carried by a trusted messenger, likely a monk or a lay brother from Abelard's monastery, who traveled between their respective communities, or a sympathetic scholar who understood the unique bond between them. The journey between the Paraclete and Saint Marcel, where Abelard resided, was not short, and the messenger would have needed to be discreet, as their correspondence was a subject of much scrutiny, both within the church and among the public. The letter would have been delivered into Abelard's own hands, and one can only imagine the impact of her raw honesty and unwavering devotion on a man who had faced so much public humiliation and personal despair. The survival of Heloises' letters, along with Abelard's, is a remarkable story in itself. They were not discarded as private correspondence, but recognized for their profound intellectual and emotional depth. They were copied by scribes, circulated among scholars, and eventually collected into formal manuscripts. Their literary and philosophical value, as well as the dramatic story they told, ensured their preservation in monastic and private libraries across Europe. In later centuries, the letters were published and widely studied, becoming a cornerstone of medieval literary and philosophical scholarship. Heloises' letter to Abelard continues to captivate readers with its timeless depiction of enduring love, intellectual passion, and the complex human heart grappling with faith, fate, and an unbreakable bond that transcended all earthly limitation. It stands as a powerful voice from the Middle Ages, whispering across time about a love that could not be silenced.